Hannah, I need to tell you something. I have a new woman in my life. The words hung in the air, sharp and cold. I stared at Ethan, my husband of 8 years, wondering if I'd heard him correctly. His eyes, once warm and loving, now held a detached coolness that chilled me to the bone. What are you talking about? I managed to choke out, my hands gripping the edge of the kitchen counter for support. Ethan wheeled his chair closer, his movements deliberate. I want a divorce, Hannah. I've met someone else. The room spun. I'd spent the last 2 years caring for him after the accident, juggling my work as a video editor and raising our son, Lucas. And this was how he repaid me? How long? I whispered, tears threatening to spill. 6 months, he replied, his voice devoid of emotion. I'm sorry, but I need a fresh start. This disability, it's changed everything. A knock at the door interrupted us. Mavis, Ethan's mother, bustled in without waiting for an answer. Her eyes darted between us, sensing the tension. What's going on here? She demanded. Ethan turned to her, his chin lifted defiantly. I've told Hannah about the divorce. To my surprise, Mavis's face crumpled. She rushed to my side, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. Oh, Hannah, I'm so sorry. I've known about the affair for a while now. I jerked away from her, shock giving way to anger. You knew? And you didn't tell me? Mavis nodded, her eyes brimming with tears. I thought he'd come to his senses. But now... She turned to Ethan, her voice hardening. You need to leave, Ethan. Hannah deserves better than this. As Ethan wheeled himself out of the kitchen, leaving me with his mother, I felt my world crumbling around me. But beneath the pain and betrayal, a small spark of resilience flickered to life. I had sacrificed everything for this man, and he had thrown it all away. Now it was time to focus on myself and Lucas. Little did I know, this was just the beginning of a journey that would test my strength, reveal long-buried secrets, and ultimately lead me to a life I never imagined possible. I sat on the edge of my bed, clutching an old photo album. The house was quiet, Lucas was asleep, and Ethan had left for his parents' place. As I flipped through the pages, memories flooded back, bittersweet and painful. There we were, young and carefree, at our college graduation. Ethan's arm was around my waist, his smile bright and genuine. I traced the outline of his face, remembering how he'd proposed that very day, full of dreams and promises. We'll conquer the world together, Hannah, he'd said, slipping the ring on my finger. Another photo caught my eye, our wedding day. I was radiant in white, and Ethan looked at me like I was his whole world. The tears I'd been holding back finally spilled over. What happened to us? I whispered to the empty room. I flipped forward, landing on a picture taken just days before Ethan's accident. We were at the beach with Lucas, building sandcastles. Ethan was teaching our son how to pat the sand just right, both of them laughing. The accident changed everything. I remembered the endless hospital visits, the grueling physical therapy sessions, the nights I spent researching his condition while he slept fitfully beside me. I'd put my career on hold, dedicating every waking moment to his recovery and our family. A surge of anger rose in my chest. All those sacrifices, and for what? To be tossed aside for another woman? The sound of my phone ringing startled me. It was Claire, my mother. Hannah, honey? How are you holding up? I took a shaky breath. I don't know, Mom. I keep thinking about the past, about everything I gave up for him. Oh, sweetheart, she sighed. You've always put others first. Maybe it's time to think about yourself. Her words hit me like a thunderbolt. She was right. I'd spent so long being Ethan's wife, Lucas's mother, that I'd forgotten who Hannah was. You know, Claire continued, your father and I have been talking. We want to help. Why don't you and Lucas come stay with us for a while? Just until you figure things out? As she spoke, I felt a tiny spark of hope ignite within me. Maybe this was my chance to rediscover myself, to build a life on my own terms. Thanks, Mom, I said, my voice stronger now. I think that's exactly what we need. As I hung up, I looked at the photo album one last time before closing it firmly. Past was beautiful, but it was gone. It was time to face the future, whatever it might hold. I was packing Lucas's toys when I heard raised voices from downstairs. Curious, I crept to the top of the stairs, listening intently. "How dare you throw away your marriage like this, Ethan?" It was Mavis, her voice sharp with anger. "After everything Hannah's done for you." "It's my life, Mother," Ethan shot back. "I'm not happy anymore. Can't you understand that?" I held my breath, straining to hear more. "Understand?" Mavis scoffed. "What I understand is that you're being selfish and short-sighted. Do you think your new woman will stick around when things get tough? Hannah's been by your side through everything." There was a pause, then Mavis's voice dropped to a dangerous whisper. "If you go through with this divorce, Ethan, don't expect any more financial support from your father and me. We won't stand by and watch you destroy this family." My heart raced. I knew Ethan relied heavily on his parents' money since the accident. Would this change his mind? "You can't do that," Ethan sputtered. "I need that money." "Then make the right choice," Mavis said firmly. I waited for Ethan's response, my whole body tense. But what came next shocked me to my core. "No," Ethan said, his voice cold and determined. "I don't need your money or your approval. I'm going through with the divorce, and there's nothing you can do to stop me." I stumbled back from the stairs, my mind reeling. Ethan was willing to give up everything, his family, his financial security, for this other woman. The depth of his betrayal hit me anew, leaving me breathless. Footsteps thundered up the stairs, and I barely made it back to Lucas's room before Ethan burst in, his face flushed with anger. "Pack faster," he snapped. "I want you out of here by tomorrow." I stared at him, this stranger who had replaced my loving husband. "Ethan, think about what you're doing. Think about Lucas." "I have thought about it," he cut me off. "This is what I want. Deal with it." As he wheeled himself out of the room, I sank to the floor, surrounded by Lucas's half-packed toys. The finality of it all crashed over me. There was no going back, no fixing this. Our marriage was truly over. But as the initial shock faded, I felt something else stirring within me, a fierce determination. If Ethan could be so ruthless in pursuing what he wanted, then so could I. It was time to fight for myself and for Lucas's future. I picked up my phone with shaking hands and dialed my parents' number. "Mom?" I said when Claire answered. "I need your help. We're coming home tomorrow." The morning sun streamed through the windows as I zipped up the last suitcase. Lucas sat on the bed, clutching his favorite stuffed dinosaur, his eyes wide with confusion. "Mommy, why are we going to Grandma and Grandpa's house?" he asked, his little voice trembling. I knelt beside him, forcing a smile. "We're going on an adventure, sweetie. It'll be fun, I promise." Car horn honked outside. My parents had arrived to help us move. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. As we carried boxes and bags downstairs, Ethan wheeled into the living room, his face a mask of indifference. "So you're really doing this," he said, his tone flat. I paused, a box in my arms. "You gave me no choice, Ethan," he scoffed. "There's always a choice. You're choosing to break up our family."
Anger flared within me. "No, you did that when you decided to have an affair." My father appeared in the doorway, his eyes narrowing at Ethan. "Everything okay here, Hannah?" I nodded, grateful for his presence. "We're fine, Dad. Just finishing up." As we loaded the car, I caught sight of Mavis watching from her kitchen window next door. Our eyes met, and she gave me a sad, understanding nod. Despite everything, I felt a pang of loss. This house, this neighborhood, it had been my home for so long. With the car packed, I went to get Lucas. He was saying goodbye to Ethan, who hugged him tightly. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I'd married, and my resolve wavered. "Hannah," Ethan said, his voice softer now, "are you sure about this? Maybe we can work things out." I hesitated, years of love and memories washing over me. But then I remembered his cold words, his betrayal, and I straightened my shoulders. No, Ethan. It's too late for that. As we drove away, Lucas waved goodbye to the only home he'd ever known. I watched in the rearview mirror as Ethan grew smaller, a lone figure in his wheelchair on the front lawn. "You okay, honey?" my mother asked from the passenger seat. I gripped the steering wheel tighter. "I will be," I said, surprising myself with the determination in my voice. This is just the beginning. As we turned the corner, leaving our old life behind, I felt a mix of fear and exhilaration. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, it was mine to choose. Whatever came next, I knew I had the strength to face it, for myself and for Lucas. The gentle hum of my computer filled the makeshift office in my parents' spare room. I was knee-deep in a video editing project when Lucas burst in, his face streaked with tears. "Mommy, when are we going home? I miss Daddy." My heart clenched. It had been 3 weeks since we'd left, and adjusting hadn't been easy for either of us. I pulled Lucas onto my lap, stroking his hair. "This is our home now, sweetie. Remember? We talked about this." He buried his face in my shirt, his little body shaking with sobs. I held him close, fighting back my own tears. This was the hardest part, seeing Lucas struggle and knowing I couldn't fix it with a simple hug or kiss. A soft knock at the door interrupted us. Mom poked her head in, her eyes full of concern. "Everything okay in here?" I nodded, mouthing "I've got this" over Lucas's head. She smiled sympathetically and retreated, leaving us alone again. As Lucas's sobs subsided, my phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. "We need to talk. Can I see Lucas this weekend?" I stared at the message, a mix of emotions swirling inside me. Part of me wanted to refuse, to protect Lucas from more upheaval. But I knew that wasn't fair, to Lucas or to Ethan. "Lucas, honey," I said gently, "how would you like to spend some time with Daddy this weekend?" His face lit up, and for a moment I felt a pang of guilt. Was I doing the right thing, uprooting our lives like this? Later that night, after tucking Lucas in, I sat at the kitchen table with Mom and Dad. The weight of the day's events pressed down on me. "I don't know if I can do this," I confessed, my voice barely above a whisper. "Maybe I should give Ethan another chance for Lucas's sake." Dad reached across the table, squeezing my hand. "Hannah, you're stronger than you know. You're doing what's best for both of you in the long run." Mom nodded in agreement. "It's not going to be easy, but we're here for you. Every step of the way." Their unwavering support bolstered my resolve. I thought about all I'd been through, all I'd sacrificed. I couldn't go back now. I picked up my phone and typed a reply to Ethan. "Yes, you can see Lucas this weekend. But this doesn't change anything between us. We need to move forward, separately." As I hit send, I felt a strange mix of sadness and liberation. This was it, the point of no return. Whatever came next, I knew I had to face it head-on, for myself and for Lucas. Our new life was just beginning, and despite the challenges, I was determined to make it work. The coffee shop bustled with afternoon patrons, but I barely noticed them. Across from me sat Mavis, her hands wrapped tightly around her mug, her eyes avoiding mine. "Hannah, there's something you need to know about Ethan's accident," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. My heart raced. "What about it?" Mavis took a deep breath. "It wasn't just an unfortunate incident. Ethan, he was driving recklessly that night. He'd been drinking. The world seemed to tilt on its axis." "What?" "But he told me. He lied." Mavis cut in, her eyes finally meeting mine. "We all did. Raymond and I. We covered it up. We thought we were protecting him, but—" Her words faded into background noise as memories flooded back. The late-night phone call. The rush to the hospital. Ethan's broken body and shattered dreams. All this time, I'd believed it was just bad luck. But it was his own doing. "Why are you telling me this now?" I managed to ask, my voice shaking. Mavis reached across the table, grasping my hand. "Because you deserve the truth. And because—" I can't keep living with this guilt. As she continued to speak, revealing more details about that fateful night, I felt a strange mix of anger and relief wash over me. Anger at the lies, at the years I'd spent blaming myself for not being able to fix Ethan. Relief that I finally knew the truth. Does Lucas know? I asked suddenly, thinking of my son. Mavis shook her head. No one outside the immediate family knows. Hannah, I'm so sorry. We should have told you years ago. I stood up abruptly, needing to escape to process this bombshell. I need to go. I can't deal with this right now. As I rushed out of the coffee shop, my phone buzzed. A text from Ethan. We need to talk about Lucas's custody arrangement. Can we meet tomorrow? I stared at the message, a new resolve hardening within me. No more lies. No more manipulation. It was time to take control of my life and Lucas's future. With trembling fingers, I typed my reply. Yes, we need to talk. But not just about Lucas. About everything, Ethan. The truth stops here. As I hit send, I felt a strange mix of fear and determination. The life I thought I knew was crumbling around me, but from the ashes, I could see a new path forming. One where I held the reins, where the truth, no matter how painful, would guide my decisions. Tomorrow's meeting with Ethan loomed like a storm on the horizon, but for the first time in years, I felt ready to face it head-on. No more being the victim. It was time to rewrite my story, our story, on my own terms. The courtroom felt suffocating as I sat across from Ethan, his lawyer whispering urgently in his ear. My own attorney squeezed my hand reassuringly, but I barely felt it. Everything had led to this moment. Your Honor, Ethan's lawyer began, my client is seeking joint custody of Lucas. Mr. Thompson has been an integral part of his son's life and… Objection. My lawyer interrupted. Your Honor, we have evidence that Mr. Thompson's accident, which led to his disability, was a result of his own reckless behavior. This calls into question his ability to provide a safe environment for the child. The courtroom erupted in murmurs. Ethan's face paled, his eyes darting to me in shock. I met his gaze steadily, years of pent-up anger and hurt fueling my resolve. Is this true, Mr. Thompson? The judge asked, her piercing gaze fixed on Ethan. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I once loved, vulnerable, scared. But then his jaw set, and he straightened in his wheelchair. Your Honor, what happened that night was a mistake. But it doesn't change the fact that I'm Lucas's father. I love my son.
Love isn't always enough, I found myself saying, my voice stronger than I felt. Lucas deserves stability, honesty. Something you haven't provided, Ethan. The judge called for a recess, and as we filed out of the courtroom, Ethan wheeled up to me. How could you do this, Hannah? Using my accident against me? How could I? I hissed, leaning in close. How could you lie to me for years? How could you throw away our marriage, our family, for some fling? His face crumpled. She left me, he admitted quietly. Said she couldn't handle the pressure. Hannah, I've lost everything. Please, don't take Lucas too. For a moment, I felt a twinge of sympathy. But then I remembered all the nights I'd cried myself to sleep, all the sacrifices I'd made, all the lies I'd been fed. You did this to yourself, Ethan. It's time you faced the consequences. As I turned to walk away, he called out, I'll fight you on this, Hannah. I won't give up Lucas without a fight. I paused, looking back at him. Then fight, Ethan. But know this, I'm stronger now. And I'll do whatever it takes to protect our son. Returning to the courtroom, I felt a strange mix of determination and exhaustion. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, I truly believed I could win. As the judge took her seat, ready to deliver her decision, I closed my eyes and took a deep breath. Whatever happened next, I was ready to face it head-on. The sun streamed through the windows of my new home office as I put the finishing touches on my latest video project. 2 years had passed since the divorce, and life had taken on a rhythm I never thought possible. Mom, look what I made. Lucas burst into the room, holding up a colorful drawing. I swiveled in my chair, taking in my son's beaming face. It's beautiful, sweetheart. Why don't you show Grandma and Grandpa? As Lucas scampered off, I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. My parents had been my rock, moving in to help with Lucas while I rebuilt my career. Their love and support had been invaluable. The doorbell rang and I tensed, knowing who it was. Taking a deep breath, I went to answer it. Ethan sat in his wheelchair, looking older than his years. "Hey, Hannah. Is Lucas ready?" I nodded, calling for our son. As Lucas hugged his father, I saw a flicker of the man I once loved. But the bitterness and regret in Ethan's eyes reminded me of how far we'd come. "Have a great time, buddy," I said, kissing Lucas goodbye. "Remember, Daddy will bring you back on Sunday." As they left, I felt a familiar pang of sadness, but it no longer overwhelmed me. The custody arrangement wasn't perfect, but it worked. Lucas was happy, and that's what mattered most. Back inside, I found my parents in the kitchen, preparing for our weekly family dinner. The house was filled with the aroma of Mom's famous pot roast. "Everything okay?" Dad asked, noticing my expression. I smiled, realizing that yes, everything was okay. More than okay. "You know what? I think I'm finally at peace with all of this." Mom wrapped me in a hug. "You've come so far, Hannah. We're so proud of you." As we sat down to dinner, laughing and sharing stories, I felt a sense of contentment I hadn't experienced in years. My life wasn't perfect, but it was mine. I had faced betrayal, fought for my son, and emerged stronger. Later that night, as I tucked Lucas into bed after Ethan dropped him off, my son looked up at me with his father's eyes. "Mom, are you happy?" The question caught me off guard, but I didn't hesitate. "Yes, sweetheart. I'm very happy. Are you?" He nodded, snuggling into his pillow. "I like our new family. It's different, but it's good." As I closed his bedroom door, I realized that Lucas had summed it up perfectly. Our life was different now, but it was good. We had weathered the storm and come out stronger on the other side. Standing in the hallway, surrounded by photos of our new life, Lucas's first day of school, family picnics, holidays with my parents, I felt a sense of triumph. I had not only survived, I had thrived. This was my revenge, living well, loving fiercely, and never losing sight of what truly mattered. As I headed to bed, I smiled, ready to face whatever tomorrow might bring. The future was bright, and it was ours.